This is Dr. Cortney Baker, and I am the author of the newly released Unlimited, Conquering the Myth of the Glass Ceiling. Today we are going to talk about, on the Dove Barron Show, we are going to talk about the glass ceiling and how it is really a myth that we can conquer. So stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dove Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dove Barron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dove Barron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dove Barron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. I'm your host, Dove Barron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dove Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series, where today we're taking an insider look at women in leadership. Why do we need more of them? And what can women do to get to the top? If you're a new listener, a new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. If you're a regular, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. And we're also extremely grateful to Inc.com for signing us as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. So thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. And remember, we always need your help in staying relevant. So please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show, whatever country you're in. I know you listen in countries that most people have never heard of, and you think it doesn't matter, but it does. We need you. So thanks. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, a C-suite leader, a sales leader, entrepreneur, or leader in any capacity, you know, I hope you know, that we need more women in leadership. But in a climate today that is hyper emotionally tense, there's a highly fragile language environment. Has men's fear of being accused of sexual harassment become the new glass ceiling for women? Well, stay tuned because we're about to find out. My guest today is Cortney Baker. Dr. Cortney Baker started her adult journey as a single teenage mom. After hard work and perseverance, she earned her undergraduate and graduate degrees in Speech Pathology from the Southern Illinois University Carbondale. In 2003, Dr. Baker founded Kids Care Home Health, a pediatric home health care agency. Today, she is the CEO and owner of a multi-million-dollar nationwide enterprise. Dr. Baker went on to earn her doctoral degree from Pepperdine University in organizational leadership and devotes her time to inspiring and empowering women across the country to reach their greatest potential. She's a researcher, speaker, best-selling author, wife, and mother of 3. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Dr. Cortney Baker! Welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
You're very welcome. So it's good to have you here. Your latest book is titled Unlimited, Conquering the Myth of the Glass Ceiling. Come on, is it really a myth?
It is a myth. It is.
Tell us why it's a myth.
Well, okay. If you think about the glass ceiling, if you think about a little girl and you're talking to her and you're telling her somewhere on your journey you're going to have this mythical object in your way and it's going to stand in front of your career path and you're not going to have any way to influence it. You're going to not be able to move it, but it's going to be there. Then what message are you giving her?
Well, I can see where you're coming from. That's certainly giving her a message of don't bother.
Yes, exactly. But instead, if you look at your journey as a maze or a labyrinth,
right.
Yes, there are going to be twists and turns and times that you're going to have to go back. But if you keep persevering, you're going to be able to accomplish whatever you desire. And now that I've done the research, I know that there are 4 main challenges that women go through when climbing the corporate ladder or in any position outside of the home. And if we look at that and say, let's create strategies around those 4 challenges, then that gives them empowerment and the ability to own their career instead of thinking it's, in some damn ceiling's hands.
Well, I love the idea of empowering women to deal with this, and as you said, in these 4 specific areas. But I don't think we can deny that there is not a fair shake for women, that it's equal. I don't think we can deny exactly. that there's a myth that people of color have it as easy as it's a myth that there's any challenge for people of color or people of transsexual or people who are just simply the other half of the population, women.
Right, exactly. And I'm not saying that it's equal at all. I'm saying here are the challenges. You will face them.
Right.
In any position in any industry. I mean, it's no secret that right now women are 5%, less than 6% of the CEOs in the S&P 500.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have it equal. However, if we look at it and say, this is in your hands, let's create strategies instead of, the alternative, then we have the power in our hands.
And I love that it's not about, I think that I have many people who are friends who are trans or gay or of color, and of course women. Yeah. And I've said, I believe with all my heart, that the most detrimental thing you have in your career, and by that I don't mean it in wealth and money, but I mean as in following your purpose and doing what you came here to do, is any belief you carry of being a victim of something, including being born with a vajayjay instead of a penis, right?
Right.
If that's,
exactly.
And I'm a fighter for women. My hashtag is he for she, he with the number 4 she, because we have to. Jesus, listen, guys, as you're listening to this, watching this, I want you to get something. Women can survive without us. There's enough sperm in the sperm banks that women don't need us. But we will not survive without them. So ready, guys? Wakey, wakey.
That's one way to look at it.
Well, it's just the facts, right? And coming to that, coming back to that piece, here's where it gets uneven. And you have a somewhat unique understanding of this, because as I said in the introduction, you started out as a single mom, and you recently got named as the Texas Businesswoman of the Year. That seems like legendary shit. That seems like,
Well, thanks.
Well, you know what I mean? Because we think of, this Texas girl who is in high school, gets pregnant, and then we have maybe through the media, we have this picture of her now living in a trailer with half a dozen kids and an alcoholic or drug-using partner. And, the movie shows stories of her telling tales of the fact that she was good at school and she thought she could have been something. You took that story and transformed it. As I said, multiple degrees, CEO, business person, woman of the year. Tell us a little bit about that mindset. So I want to, and I know I just gave you a lot there, so we're going to parcel it down a bit. But the mindset, first of all, of were you a good student, and then getting pregnant? What's the mindset of what now?
Yeah, I graduated top 14th in my class, and I was the first senior accepted anywhere. And and I was going to Texas A&M University, and then in February, March, I found out I was pregnant, and I really look back at that whole journey as because school was never a non-negotiable for me, and so it just delayed the fact that I was going to go instead of dismay, not being a part of the factor.
Right.
And then I had my son 6 months after I graduated high school. So, and he's 24 now and amazing. And you know, I mean, the struggle is tough, but when we look at it as it's optional to do the things that we came here to do and live in our purpose, then that's when we get off path.
But for me, I mean, what I'm trying to do is I want to have women listening to us. Maybe some of them are young women who are, high school. I'm sure that's not a big demographic for me, but maybe it is for the people who are listening. It's their children, their daughters, and so, was there a part of you that when, okay, this is my lot now. I'm going to be a mom, and graduating and potentially going to university. Yeah, not really a big deal anymore. The focus now is my son.
It was my son, but because it was my son, it was not an option. And it really, I mean, you're a psychologist, it's mindset. It's really saying, okay, it's not now, but when. And I got married. I had a failed marriage by the time I was, I think, like 21. And it wasn't his biological father. And that took me to Illinois. And, he was bipolar and there was a lot of stuff going on. And I realized, I couldn't live like that, but I needed to make a better way for my son. And there were nights that my son was in night daycare, and you just do what you got to do to make it happen.
This is the piece that I don't want to skip over. I know I'm spending a long time on this, but I want to, because I think it's so easy to dismiss it, right? And make you an anomaly. But I want to get underneath that a little bit for people, because I want them to grasp where you're coming from. Because, again, you're a teenage mom, you get married, you're married to a bipolar guy, you're 21 and divorced, been there, done that one, know that one. I did the same. It's easy to go, you know what? The odds are stacked against me here. The forces that be, the fate, luck, all the things that people want to. I get it. I'm not criticizing anybody. I get the sense of I'm a victim of these circumstances, and it's not my fault. And I had bigger dreams, as I have often talked about the. On the waterfront piece with Marlon Brando, where it goes, I could have been a contender. Yeah, no, you didn't do what it took to win. So, you didn't say I could have been a contender. You did. And I'm just trying to help people to go who are sitting with their daughter or their son in a similar situation, who was, got pregnant, had a baby, maybe gone through a divorce, maybe had a partner who was mentally challenged with some disease or something, and gone through this. Way too much for somebody at 21. If somebody's telling you that at 45, you go, holy crap, that's a lot.
Yeah. Help
us to grasp what was the piece for you that went, you know what? I'm willing to put my kid in nighttime daycare. I'm willing to do that. And I'm not a victim of this. Was that a conscious thought? Or was it just a part of your DNA, if you will?
I think it's both. If you look at your journey in life and go, okay, I could go this way or this way, left or right. And I just think it's your options. And knowing that if this is an option and this is non-negotiable, then you make this work no matter what shit you got to go through. I stayed in school when I could have moved home, but if I'd have moved home, I would have had to pay out-of-state tuition and live with my mom. And it's really hard to be a mom and a daughter in the same house. And so
out-of-state tuition is easier than living with your mother.
Yeah, out-of-state tuition, done. But it was like it, and then it's perseverance, it's grit. And it's what people lack today, honestly. And not that I've got it all figured out, because God knows I make mistakes every day, but it's also knowing that I'm committed to be the best me, because I don't want to get to the end and look back and think, God, I wish I'd have done that.
So what is grit? From your point of view, Cortney, what is grit?
It's doing exactly what you're intended and your purpose is doing, regardless of the circumstances. Because if that road is gonna be worth going down, I promise you it's gonna be hard.
But you just said something, about knowing, like, this is why I came here, this is what I made to do. But I mean, let's face it. I know, because I work with many people who are in their 50s and 60s, and they still don't know what the hell they're doing. They still don't know what their purpose is. So, again, as a young lady, even 21 years old, do you feel like you knew yours? Do you feel like you had a sense of your purpose?
So, yes and no. I didn't know exactly what it was, but when I was 12 years old, my sister, who was 4 years older than me, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Wow.
And I watched her deteriorate right in front of my eyes. I would help feed her and bathe her, and I would help her walk and talk. And my parents were divorced, so I was her constant and she was mine. And then when I was 16, she died. And I realized how fragile life is and how quickly it can be gone. And so, no, I didn't know that, I would be sitting here, going through all that I've been through as Texas Businesswoman of the Year. But I knew that my goal in life and my purpose was to help others, no matter what that looked like. And that kind of helped me become a speech pathologist and then start a company where I help children. I mean, we've helped probably, it was over 17,000 children in the last 14 years.
Wow, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Kids with special needs. Yeah. Thank you. Have a bigger, brighter future. Mm-hmm. So.
One of the things that I like that you use as an analogy, because you talked about it in a much simpler form a few moments ago. You said, there's this path or there's this path. And on one of those paths, it's sort of what I call societally predestined. Well, you got pregnant at 16, it's all over, kids, right? So you're now going to live in a trailer and you have 4 kids and, that's kind of your life. Mm-hmm. It's that societally predestined. And then you talked about another path. But the analogy I like that you use is I think far more realistic. And that is, it's a labyrinth. That path is a labyrinth. And I like that. Tell us why you chose the labyrinth. I mean, I know what appeals to me. Tell me for you what it was about it, because I love that.
Well, thank you. And that's actually it's not my intellectual property. That was a researcher that I found that talked about that made so much sense. And I was just destined to help her get her word out, or her concept out. And her name has escaped me because, I've had a stroke too. Yeah, God. So that memory thing isn't always my best feature. But it's helping women realize, and men too, that's life. Life is going to throw you some curveballs, and you better be ready with your catcher's mitt. And so just going through, okay, here, I've hit this dead end. I'm going to have to turn. I'm going to have to, if you look at it from a perspective of a career, you may get to the top of an organization and know that you have more to give, but you can't give there. So you may take a lateral position in a different organization so you can move up. I mean, that's just life.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a peer of mine yesterday, and we were talking about this journey of success and, what a lot of bullshit we feed ourselves about how you're supposed to go from here to there, and nobody does that. And one of the things we were talking about is, it's easy to look at other people and go, well, they went from here to there, but no, you're not in their life. And you don't know all those circumstances that put them there. And that maybe, I remember being at high school, being a kid and being looking around at these kids that were all, I went to a very wealthy school in my high school, and there was me and three other kids who were poor, and we were dirt poor, like secondhand shoes, and take your shoes off to play in the outside because you couldn't damage your shoes. So, and watching these rich kids who were beautiful. I mean, they were coiffed and they were done, and realizing later, in my mid-late 20s, when I had gone back to visit the country I was born in, that many of these kids had peaked at 18. Mm-hmm. The kids I looked and went, oh, I wish I was them, had peaked at 18. And now, at this age, I can look back and see people who I looked at 30 and they peaked at 35. And one of my things to say to people is, what if you've not reached your peak yet? Mm-hmm. And instead of comparing yourself to them, because I think it would be pretty shitty to peak at 25.
Right? Oh, it'd be horrible.
Right? So, it's pretty cool to peak a little bit later in life.
Yeah.
And like I said, I love this idea of a labyrinth. It's very, very cool. But I want to come back in here because women I see that they face challenges that are part of that labyrinth that blocks. But talk to us from your point of view. You've done a ton of research in this. You've got your background in organizational leadership. You've done your stuff around women, and you, as I said, you are Texas Businesswoman of the Year. What are the benefits? Like, talk to our viewers, our listeners, about the real benefits of having women in leadership roles.
So there was a meta-analysis, which is just a fancy word of saying it was a deeper dive into 50 research studies that found that women lead in a more transformational way. And when we look at that, especially when you couple that with the millennials that are coming into the workforce, they need that and coddling. They need that nurturance and collaboration and teamwork and building, and they need to feel listened to. But who doesn't? But I think that if you look at women leaders in that context of how they're going to really build your teams, that's just one of the ways. Really add cohesion to your workforce when they're not threatened. Because one of the things that threatens women's leadership are other women.
So talk to us about that, because that was actually one of my questions for you. Because, again, I want to talk about myths versus reality. Mm-hmm. So is it a myth that women leaders are bitchy to other women who are potentially leaders, who are willing? I mean, and by the way, I use the word bitchy not as a feminine term. It's actually, for me, it's both. Some of my mates, I'll say, being a bitch. It's nothing to do with gender. It's to do with bitchiness. It's about owning your power and being clear and being focused. But is it a myth that women are that way with other women who they're competing with? And is it a myth that goes from the top down or from down up, or is it all nonsense?
It's 360, and okay. It's not a myth. Okay. That is absolutely true. One of the women that I spoke to, and she was a CEO of a hospital, and I asked her to tell me about her female mentors, and she just laughed and she said, "I haven't had mentors. I've had tormentors," and I loved that phrase, because that's exactly what we're doing to each other. I mean, not all women, obviously, but we need to really build each other up and realize that a house divided cannot stand. And we, as women, if we're ever going to get equality, we're going to have to be on the same team. And it is 360. Sometimes it reminds me of the crabs in the barrel, right, that are trying to get up to the top. And one thing I do want to make sure that I address is that this is not a women versus men problem at all. Okay. And so that's huge for me, because I think a lot of people think, pro women. No, it's pro leadership.
Absolutely.
we are in a global economy, and any organization that doesn't do what they can to get the best leadership on top is really doing themselves a disservice.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that people, as you said, you just pointed out very clearly that we look at it in gender as opposed, I'll give it, for me, the best analogy that I've used from the platform is often people will say, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican. My response is, how about being an American? Mm-hmm. How about deciding on something that's good for the country? And it's the same thing in gender. I'm a man, I'm a woman, and we got to fight for this and we got to fight for that. How about you fight for leadership? Mm-hmm. How about we come together for the greater good of the purpose of the organization, the purpose of the individuals, as opposed to creating, I understand the psychology that we are designed to find enemies. Mm-hmm. Because we have to deal with threats. But I think that the nature of us to find threats doesn't mean that we can stop being discerning about that threat. Because maybe the threat that we're perceiving a threat that doesn't exist.
Well, and we've lost the ability to have a conversation with people who may not think like we do.
Very well said.
And it's just, what we haven't realized is that when I devalue your opinion, that actually devalues my own. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm telling you can't have an opinion, then what makes mine any more important?
Yeah. It's fascinating. I am a big supporter of women in leadership, mm-hmm. and it's not, and I've often said, it's not because they're women, it's because, by the way, I totally disagree with, I am quite vocal about disagreement around the men versus women, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I think it's all bullshit. The bottom line is that's social conditioning. That's how we're brought up. We know from examining babies' brains that there's no difference in the brain at birth. There's a difference in adult life because of the social conditioning, because the brain is plastic. We know all that. However, we also can't deny that the social conditioning is there. And so men are pushed into that rational, logical, and women are pushed more into the nurturance side. But you just said it. It's so vitally important for us to get that that's what's needed today. And if you want to be a great leader today, as a man, you need higher levels of emotional intelligence.
Correct.
And the best mentors for that are women who have grown up learning how to take care of people, learning to put the feelings and the thoughts of others at a little bit of a higher priority that we need, as men need to learn. And I think that that's one of the greatest things that women bring to us is the centering around relationship. I was speaking last week, and one of the things I said is leadership is a ship that sails in the ocean of relationships.
That's perfect.
Until we get that, we're dead in the water. We think it's about being decisive. We think about it being visionary. All those things matter. But the engine is that leadership is a ship that sails in an ocean of relationships. And what do we know? That generally speaking, again, generally, women have been conditioned to be far better at that than men, and we need to shut the hell up and learn.
Well, yes, that would help, but it's also when we determine that the really the guiding principle of that ship needs to be integrity. Core at the helm, that needs to be where we're headed. Male, female, whatever. This whole movement of #MeToo and the everything that's coming out now about the sexual harassment in the workplace, and it's like let's not lose focus of the fact that if we were focused on integrity and leading well, then that stuff wouldn't even happen. Male, female, whatever.
So I need your help here, Cortney. I need you to help me and help our listeners, because I mentioned it in the introduction. we live in a hyperbolic situation right now with the Me Too movement and with the Time's Up and all these kinds of things. And I will be fair and I'll say that I want to listen and I encourage others to listen. And I think it's important that these voices are being heard. Mm-hmm. But I'm also talking to men who are terrified. I mean,
Absolutely.
Literally terrified of opening their mouth, saying anything, because it also seems that a lot of this stuff is retroactive. So men are saying that they're being held accountable for stuff that was okay 5-10 years ago, and not okay as in the person kept quiet, but genuinely societally was okay. Millennials are upset about the show Friends now, apparently. It was released on Netflix, and millennials are very upset because they see some things as misogynistic, or they see things as anti-gay, or, And the problem is that we're all geniuses looking back.
Right.
But in the present, one of the things I'm seeing in male leaders is they're terrified. Help men navigate these waters if you could, please.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that women, there is a huge difference between being told, Dove, you look amazing today, and, hey, I want to, go to bed with you. I mean,
Sure.
To say that those are one and the same, it really blurs the lines and the effectiveness of the Me Too movement. And I think that when we start defining better at a corporate level of what sexual harassment is and what it isn't, but you're right. I mean, we've been operating back in, the day when the boss, who was typically male, walked by and patted the secretary on the ass and said, hey, give me a cup of coffee. And that was okay. But, if you look for something to be offended by, you're going to find it.
Definitely find it.
And to look back at Friends and to be offended now, it's like, come on, people. I just think that we really need to say, okay, this is where we are today. Let's make it better going forward. Mm-hmm. What does that look like? Let's define it.
The other side of it, of course, is that we have. I mean, I think there's obviously the situation has been. There's a lot of hyperbole that's gone around because of women who, for me, as a man who believes in women's rights, I was, loved the fact that many things changed in the 70s and the 80s for women. It's wonderful, and those same issues are suddenly back. Women are now fighting for reproductive rights and all kinds of things around owning their own bodies and owning their own power. And the man who is the president talked about grabbing women by the under areas. I get it. I get women being fierce about this. I mean, I've openly said, I'll tell you the number one thing that makes President Trump a great president. And people are like, right, what? I go, he unified women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
More women marched the day after he was inaugurated, and again this year, he's unified women, and that's a good thing. The bad thing about it is now we've got this crazy ass tension, as opposed to the equalization and the value of what we can each bring to something. And this, what would you say to the man who's in front of you who says, okay, I'm a CEO or I'm a C-suite leader, and I actually don't know how to pay a compliment anymore because I'm terrified of just saying, you look great today, and her thinking, oh my God, I mean, I've heard this from guys, oh my God, you're trying to seduce me, or you're having power over me. And we can't forget that there is a power differential, and people have to pay attention to that too.
Absolutely. And it's power which is linked to control.
Right.
However, if you are at a work situation, then focus on work. If you want to compliment someone, compliment their work. Mm-hmm. Don't compliment their skirt, Right. But I think if you focus on that and have that open conversation of, hey, I would like to mentor you. However, I don't want boundaries crossed. How can that relationship be positive so I can help you on your career journey? But we just instead shut down and don't have those conversations because we're afraid.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we started out earlier talking about the obstacles, the labyrinth, the things that get in the way for us. And I talked about, there are circumstances of life. One could say, you chose to get pregnant. You did what it took to get pregnant.
I sure did.
Unless your name is Mary and your boy's name is Jesus. So, that was a choice. And again, there was a choice to get married. And then there was a choice to leave that marriage at 21. There was a choice to go back to school. But there are things that happen that don't seem like a choice. And in 2012, something happened for you that most people would not say is a choice. Talk to us about that and how that, if it did, how did it transform you as a leader?
It absolutely did. So in August of 2012, I had just started my doctoral work at Pepperdine. And I woke up on September 18th of 2012 and went to go wash my hair, and I couldn't remember how. And I decided that I wasn't going to go to the doctor, but my husband was home, and he said, go ahead and lay back down. And I did, and when I woke up, I was in the hospital. I'd had a stroke in 2 places, and it was on a Tuesday, and on Thursday, I had a 7-hour brain surgery.
Holy
and I was in the hospital for 10 days, and I got out the day before my 38th birthday. So I took that semester off and went back to school the next semester. And so I started back my doctoral journey after my stroke.
So just let us get the timeline on this. So August, you can't wash your hair.
That was September.
Okay, September, you can't remember how to wash your hair. You have a lie down, you wake up in the hospital, you have a 7-hour surgery. What did you lose some abilities for a while there? I mean, aside from remembering how to wash your hair.
Yeah, it's funny because in the hospital, they tested me for physical therapy, occupational therapy, activities of daily living, and speech therapy. Mm-hmm. And as a speech therapist, I was a little cocky, and I said, oh, did you give me the Boston, which is the assessment for adults when you have a stroke?
Right.
And the speech therapist kind of smiled at me, and she said, no, I gave you, and told me this other test that I'd never heard of because I don't deal with adults. That's all I'd remembered from college days. And so I said, oh, how'd I do? And she just said very coyly, well, you qualified for speech therapy. So,
smart ass.
I know. I was like, God, can I get out of here now? So, in fact, I did qualify for speech therapy, but I'm a very stubborn individual, and I decided, well, I can do this myself. So I did my own speech therapy, and I still have residual memory and some word finding issues, but really that's it. That's all I have.
Wow.
That from my stroke.
Was there any sense of again? I guess going and doing a doctoral degree is off the table now because my coconut's done in.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I had someone that was a really close friend of mine in school who called, and he said, well, you don't sound affected. Get up, get back to class. And that was right after I got home. And I am so thankful that my classmates petitioned the school and said, we want her back in, because I had actually withdrawn. So I would have had to go back and re-enroll. And they said, okay, if she wants to come back, she can.
Wow.
And I'm so thankful that they believed in me, because I really was concerned about what would life look like at that point.
Right.
I mean, I was only maybe a month out of post-stroke.
Wow. Again, this is another thing that I want to remind people of. I've often said it's an important thing to show love to the people you love. It's also important to show love in its form, whatever that form might be, to those who need it. It's also important to show love in the form, whatever the form may be, to those who don't appear to deserve it. Mm-hmm. And it also is important to show love to those, love in whatever form, including support, to those who don't appear to need it. So they might have looked at you and thrown you into one of two categories. Oh my God, you're a victim of stroke. Mm-hmm. Or you don't need help. You're a strong woman. Look at you. Look at what you've done. Mm-hmm. But instead, they did say, you're a strong woman. You can do this. And I feel for you. I'm there for you and supportive of you. And I think this is one of the things that we all tend to forget. We shove people in a box. We go, you're the person who, I remember when my wife and I were dating and something happened with my father, and I was pretty upset, and I asked my wife to hold me. And she, this is when we first were dating. And she's like, okay. And she held me, and it was beautiful, and I wept, and I cried for 10 minutes, and then I got up, and she said, are you okay? And I go, yeah, I'm good. I just needed to let it out. And she said, wow, that was kind of weird. And I said, what? She goes, well, I just see you as a rock. And I got pissed. And I said, do rocks have any fucking feelings?
Yeah.
I said, I ain't a rock. I'm a human being. I have feelings. Mm-hmm. And that transformed our relationship. From then on, my wife never held me in that category, but always saw me as human. And I think that this is one of the things that we forget, that people go through things just because they're strong individuals like yourself and the things you've come through. It doesn't mean you don't need love and support. And I think that this is, again, now we're back to this gender thing, is that if a man goes through something, I think men are pushed even harder to get over it.
I completely agree. Don't feel, don't cry, don't. Right. And that's a dangerous message.
Hugely dangerous. But on the other side of it, if a woman feels, she's also shoved into the box of, well, you're just being an emotional, whatever the hell the words are. And it upsets me because, again, it's social conditioning, not the truth of who we are.
And stereotypes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's interesting because a lot of people think that just because on the external you've got all your shit together or whatever, mm-hmm. especially with social media. Yep. And the thing is, I really, you said that about being a rock, and people always think that about me, but what they don't realize is that as soon as I finished my dissertation, I wrote the book, I kind of gotten, it was like all these boxes were checked, and then I fell into this huge depression because I didn't know what to do next.
That is powerful. I want people to get that, because this is the thing that I deal with leaders all the time. You've checked all the boxes, you've got to the top of Success Mountain, and now you're a miserable bastard. Mm-hmm. You're feeling depressed and you're sad. So what pulled you through?
Well, one of the biggest things I had to do was I had to face a sobriety. And that was huge because my family history is a long line of alcoholics. And I realized I did not want that to be my legacy. And, we are in such a culture where that's so prevalent. Like, you're more of an outsider if you don't drink than if you do.
Of course.
And, but I knew that when I asked my 10-year-old little girl, what's one thing, actually she was 8 at the time, what's one thing about mommy you would change? And without a step, she said, you drink too much wine. That was telling. So that was my wake-up call. And what's amazing, Dove, is how much more alive I feel. I mean, I don't numb all the, I feel all the things that the rock's not supposed to feel, right. And it's beautiful. I see colors, I hear things, and it's fabulous. But I think so many leaders get in that I've checked all the boxes and now what? And then we have nowhere to go. and we go, except, down.
Well, and I think this is the important thing. We get to that top of the mountain that these guys feel, or these leaders feel empty, and they crash. And what I always say is, you can go down or you can go deep. Mm-hmm. My work takes you deep, or you can go down. That's fine. Or you can try and go higher, but the satisfaction won't be there.
Yeah.
So the only options are to keep climbing onto another mountain, which won't give you any satisfaction or fulfillment, but that's what you know to do. So go ahead, and many of them do. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. For many of them, they'll self-sabotage and crash because they remember the exhilaration of climbing the mountain. So mm-hmm. They'll destroy themselves. They'll burn it down to the ground so they can rebuild it. And that, of course, becomes another distraction. Or they can go deep. And what mm-hmm. you did in the sobriety is this choice to go deep. To look mm-hmm. at, well, what's the shit here? Because if I'm boozing and my 8-year-old is noticing enough to say that's the one thing I want mommy to stop doing, I got to pay attention. That's fabulous.
Yeah, and it really was something that, we numb for a reason, whether it's, shopping, food, alcohol, whatever, work. We're trying to escape from something. And I think we all have this hole that we have to figure out what we're going to fill it with that really feeds our purpose.
Absolutely.
And so that was what I had to determine, like, what is that hole? And, there's so much, it's layers upon, you from your history of a psychologist, we're such complex individuals, and you can't separate the 8-year-old Cortney, the 16-year-old Cortney, the 18, from the 43-year-old Cortney. Mm. And it's going back through all that and saying, okay, what can I do to clean all that up and make me okay where I am and accept just as I am who I am?
Well, the truth of it is, for all of us, we're all trying to feel better. Mm-hmm. I think that's what we all have to remember. So when you see somebody behaving like a shit, I know it's hard. I'm not saying mm-hmm. I do it every time, but to be willing to look at that person and say, this person's just trying to feel better. The reason they're being a complete total ass right now is because they're trying to feel better about something inside of themselves. And that level of compassion is important, but it's also important to turn it on ourselves and say, I'm just trying to feel better, but is this working? Does mm-hmm. this work? Is this the greatest empowerment of who I am? Does this talk to the purpose of who I am? Does this talk to the soul of who I am? The reason I came to the planet? That's more of a challenging thing.
I think in society we also, okay. Well, I think in society, if you look at that, so many people, we have conversations and we get louder and louder and louder and louder. And it's like at the end of it, you just look at it and think, all these people want to do is just be heard, but they're not even listening to themselves.
Yeah, that's very well put. That's exactly true. Mm-hmm. When it comes to what you do now, mm-hmm. what would you say is a great metaphor for what you do?
So I help put up a mirror and let other people, especially, my heart is women, see their gifts, their uniqueness, their abilities, and say, what is it that you want to do? Do you want to grow in your career? And if not, then that's okay. But what is it? It goes back to purpose. It's really helping individuals and leaders determine their purpose and how to live into that best.
One of my questions that I work with my clients on, and I want to ask it to you, and if you don't answer it, it's okay. Uh-huh. My question is this. Years ago, a friend of mine was talking to me about something, and I went, I actually have to work that out. And the question was, what is the hill you're willing to die on? What is it you're willing to fight to the bitter end for? What is it that you this matters more than anything. I will, this is, and people will say things like, well, my family, but no, that's a thing. This mm-hmm. is something within. Do you have a sense of what that is with you, Cortney?
What is let me think about that for a minute.
Okay. While you think about it, I'll ask you another question. Let that sort of let that sort
Brewing.
of seed grow in there for a moment. One of the things that I think is important for us as leaders is to recognize what matters, we were just talking about, but also what doesn't matter. What have you surrendered to? As in, you've stopped fighting that you've, at your whatever age, you suddenly went, this is a dumb fight. And you've just surrendered to it. Do you have a sense of that?
So, yes. For the longest time, it was that I had to be liked by everybody. And I realized not everybody's going to like me. And there's some people that if they do like me, then I'm really worried about that because I don't, I mean, it's like, that's not, I can't please everybody. I can't be the best for everybody at all times. And I just have to do what's best for me and my family and my company. And that's, being in the public, that there are people out there that are just positioned to troll the internet and say hateful things. And I had one time, and it just really took me a few days to recover from that. And when I realized that, went back and kind of did some research, I realized, oh my God, why would I even, part of his name was critic. And it was like, why am I allowing this to feed into my internal dialogue?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
We all get caught in it.
It's sad.
Yeah, but we all get caught in it. It's very easy to get caught in. If there's one thing that you would want leaders, and I'm actually going to do this into two groups, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
And the two groups are, and I'm sorry, but they're gender. So if there's one thing that you want the male leaders listening, watching our show to get, the practical thing that you want them to get and put into action, preferably in the next 24 hours, but certainly within the next working week, what would be that one thing for guys that you would say, please go do this? What would it be?
Please have conversations in a group setting with other, males and females and say, how can we make this an environment where people feel safe and secure and open to communication?
Fabulous. And if you were talking to women who are feeling like it's a very real thing for them, this glass ceiling, they're working under a boss or a hierarchy that just doesn't seem to allow them to go forward, what would be the practical thing you would say to them? What's the action piece with them?
So, we always hear about SMART goals. Well, I have my own take on it, and they're called DAM. Make some DAM goals. And that is, make it be definable or actionable, measurable metrics. Make some goals and don't be a victim. If you have this glass ceiling over you, make some goals for your life and work on them. Change your path. Don't be a victim.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing I would like to add to that is find a way to mentor other women.
Absolutely. That is the only way we will ever get equality is when women start pulling each other up and saying, let me show you the ropes, instead of this crazy mentality of, well, I had it rough, so you do too. That's such crap.
It's so sad.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I'm ready for that to change.
So this has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I really hope that our listeners have really taken a lot of it in. As I said, I think that oftentimes we listen to podcasts in the background, and we really need to listen back, particularly when great guests like yourself who are sharing something profound and important. And I encourage you, as the listener, to listen many times, take some notes, and of course reach out to Cortney. Please tell our audience where they can find out more about you, about your latest book, and about all the wonderful resources that you have.
Sure. It's Cortney at CourtneyBaker.com is my email address. I answer everything. Cortney has no U. True story. My mom didn't know how to spell it. And so it's Cortney. And then it's just CourtneyBaker.com.
CourtneyBaker.com. And you can also write to her which is Cortney at Cortney Baker with no U.
Yes.
Because her mom couldn't spell. That is fabulous. That is fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure and honor to have you here.
Thank you,
really am
Dov.
grateful for it. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. And I want to remind you, as I said, dear listener, to make sure you listen back, take notes, and actually reach out and write to Cortney. She gave you a personal email address. Write to her. Tell her what you got out of this show. And I want to challenge you. You can write to me too, dov@dovbaron.com. Write to us. Tell us what you got out of this show. Go on iTunes. Write a review. Tell us what you got out of the show and what you're going to do with it. Share it. If you know that this is powerful and this is important and you know other men and women who need to listen to it, then share the bloody show. Don't keep it to yourself. Get it out there. This is how we make a difference. This is about impact, folks. We got to have that impact. And remember, the research consistently shows that the biggest challenges facing some of the most successful companies can be somewhat counterintuitive in that these fast-growing companies often hit a point where they realize that they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing talent only to have them leave them before they get a chance to have their ROI. So if you're sick of training and developing your talent only to have them leave you, then come and talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets of your organization by tapping into your purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, providing you with the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. Also, remember to get yourself over to matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. You don't need a www. So matrix.fullmontyleadership.com and get your authentic leadership matrix self-assessment tool and assess yourself in leadership in the 5 categories of leadership. It's valued at $197. You get it for being a regular listener to our show. Get yourself over there. Again, I'm your host, Dov Baron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you in tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, profit in your business, your life, and your leadership. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how you are creating a glass ceiling inside your own mind. It may not be a straight path. It may indeed be a labyrinth, but it's worth the journey. And the only thing stopping you is that victim voice inside your coconut. So fire the bastard. Till next time, this is Dov Baron. I'm out.